Hello, friends. Welcome to the story of World War I. This was a war that changed the fate of the entire world. Between 1914 and 1918, approximately 20 million people lost their lives, and more than 40 million were injured. Nearly 70% of the world's population was affected, and about 65% of the world's land was involved in war operations. Many countries took part. Powerful nations like Germany, Britain, France, Russia, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, Italy, and later the United States became enemies on the battlefield. Countries that once traded together turned against each other. Do you know that this war began because of the killing of just one man? On June 28, 1914, in Sarajevo, Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary was assassinated by a young nationalist. One bullet changed the course of history and pushed the world into war. New weapons like machine guns, tanks, and poison gas made the battlefields terrifying. But why did these powerful nations become enemies? What were the real reasons behind the war? Which military alliances were formed? And which countries fought on each side? What did nations lose in this conflict? In the end, what role did the United States play? Which country was blamed for starting the war? And why were such heavy reparations imposed that payments lasted for decades? What really happened in the trenches and on the battlefields? This is the story of World War I. To find out more, watch the full video. And one request, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel Rational Brains. Let's begin. As you know, it seems that humans are never satisfied with peace, because whenever humans start to progress, somehow, a new disaster creates itself. World War I, which started in 1914 with the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary. Then, millions of people lost their lives. Property and wealth were destroyed. And finally, after massive human and economic devastation, it came to an end. This was such a disaster. I say this because at that time, the world was entering an era of modern progress. But at the same time, tensions between Europe's major powers over power, territories, and influence were rising rapidly. One major cause of this tension was the Franco-Prussian War of 1870-71, in which Germany defeated France and seized the important border region of Alsace-Lorraine. This region was highly valuable both industrially and militarily, and France wanted to regain its lost land and honor. On the other hand, Germany was rapidly becoming a strong industrial and military power and wanted to expand its influence in Europe. Britain, already a major naval power, was worried about Germany's rapidly growing navy because it feared that Germany could challenge its naval supremacy. Austria-Hungary was a large but weak empire, with various ethnic groups like Serbs, Croats, and others wanting independence. These groups were rebelling because they considered themselves separate nations and wanted their own states. Russia supported these groups, especially the Serbs, because it saw itself as the protector of Slavic nations and wanted to expand its influence in the Balkans. On 28 June 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated in Sarajevo by a nationalist youth who belonged to a Serbian nationalist group. Austria-Hungary held Serbia responsible because it saw nationalist movements in Serbia as a threat. Therefore, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. We can say that this was the beginning of World War I, because after this, an unstoppable chain of events followed, and other countries started joining. As if it were a righteous cause, Germany supported Austria-Hungary because both had a military alliance, and Germany did not want its ally to be weak. Germany officially started the war on 1 August 1914. Russia supported Serbia because it wanted to maintain influence in the Balkans and saw itself as a protector of Slavic nations. Therefore, Russia joined the war on 1 August 1914. France stood with Russia because both countries had a pre-existing defensive agreement, and France wanted to weaken Germany. Therefore, France joined the war on 3 August 1914. At first, Britain did not want to enter the war directly, but when Germany invaded France through Belgium and violated Belgium's neutrality, Britain joined the war as well because it had guaranteed the protection of Belgium and wanted to maintain the balance of power in Europe. Thus, Britain entered the war on 4 August 1914. Within a few days, due to the web of alliances and treaties, Europe's major powers were drawn into a global war. Germany attacked France quickly through Belgium to end one front swiftly and focus on Russia. But Belgium's resistance and Britain's entry made the war longer and more destructive. In the early stage, the German army advanced rapidly, reaching near Paris. Germany's plan was to defeat France quickly in one front, and then turn full attention to Russia. However, in September 1914, at the Battle of the Marne, French and British forces together stopped the German advance. This battle was crucial because if Germany had captured Paris, the war might have ended early. Afterwards, trench warfare began on the Western Front. Both sides dug deep trenches because going to open fields was almost suicidal. Between the trenches lay a dangerous area called No Man's Land, where soldiers crossing were often hit by heavy artillery and machine gun fire. Thousands of lives were lost, but very little land was gained. Thus, the war entered a slow and bloody phase. On the Eastern Front, Russia faced Germany and Austria-Hungary. Russia had a large army, but with weak weapons and training, while Germany's army was more organized and modern. As a result, battles continued in the East, but no decisive advantage was gained. By the end of 1914, it became clear that this war would not end quickly. Countries that expected a few months of fighting were now trapped in a long and devastating global conflict. Both sides' armies were stuck in a stalemate, and the goal became not only to gain land, but to exhaust the enemy and deplete their resources. The Allied powers received troops and resources from the colonies, giving them superiority in manpower. Britain began a naval blockade against Germany to prevent it from importing food and war supplies, and to weaken it from within. In response, Germany also began attacks at sea. No country wanted a long war anymore because both the economy and the people were being affected. Therefore, repeated attempts were made by both sides to break the stalemate. But due to modern weapons and strong defensive positions, the war became even longer and more destructive. At the start of the war, the Allied powers began to seize Germany's African and Asian colonies because these colonies provided Germany with resources and military bases. At the same time, Japan joined the Allies on 8 August 1914 and seized German territories in the Pacific, expanding its influence. Italy was initially allied with Germany and Austria-Hungary, but hoped that joining the Allies would give it new territories, especially in areas of Austria-Hungary with Italian populations. Therefore, in 1915, Italy opened a front against Austria-Hungary. Meanwhile, the Ottoman Empire joined the Central Powers because it felt threatened by Russia and Britain over its territories, and received military and technical assistance from Germany. Its entry made the Middle East a new theater of war. The Ottoman army fought Russia and Britain on several fronts, but mostly without success. One major event in 1915 was the Gallipoli campaign, where Britain and its allies tried to weaken the Ottoman Empire to open a sea route to Russia, but due to strong resistance, no decisive victory was achieved. During the same period, a large-scale genocide occurred within the Ottoman Empire against the Armenian population, killing approximately 1.5 million people. This event is still considered one of the major tragedies in history. To win the war, both sides began using new technologies and weapons. Germany attacked ships using submarines to cut off Britain's supply lines, and for the first time, used poisonous gas on a large scale. The sinking of a passenger ship turned American public opinion against Germany because civilians were also killed. Later, the Allied powers also used chemical weapons, making the war even more dangerous and merciless. Meanwhile, Bulgaria joined the Central Powers because it wanted to regain control over neighboring territories. With its help, Serbia was defeated, and the Balkan front changed. By 1916, the war had spread even further, with intense fighting on both sides. During this time, a long and bloody battle took place near Verdun. The goal was to exhaust the enemy. Millions of soldiers were killed or wounded, but very little land was gained. This made it clear that the war was becoming a long and devastating struggle. By 1917, all countries were exhausted because the war had become long, expensive, and devastating. In the French army, mutinies occurred because continuous fighting and heavy casualties broke the soldiers' morale. In Germany, the British naval blockade caused severe shortages of food and supplies. Russia's economy had collapsed under the burden of war, which increased public anger. Eventually, a revolution occurred in Russia. The Tsar's government was overthrown. And later, the Bolsheviks came to power because the people wanted peace and bread. The new government immediately pulled Russia out of the war to focus on internal issues. Now, Germany had to fight only on the Western Front because Russia had exited the war. But a new threat was emerging after Germany's submarine attacks and the exposure of a secret diplomatic message. The United States joined the war with the Allies in 1917 because it feared that Germany could change the global balance in its favor. In 1918, Germany made a final major offensive to defeat Britain and France before the full arrival of American troops. Initially, some successes were achieved, but as fresh American forces arrived in large numbers in Europe, the Allies launched a strong counteroffensive. The Central Powers began to weaken one by one because the prolonged war had exhausted both their economy and armies. Bulgaria surrendered first, then the Ottoman Empire, and finally Austria-Hungary also collapsed. Ultimately, on 11 November 1918, Germany also surrendered, and World War I came to an end. Better late than never. After the war, under the Treaty of Versailles, Germany was forced to limit its army, accept responsibility for the war, and pay heavy reparations because the Allies considered it the main culprit of the war. The reparations were so heavy that the final payment Germany made for World War I was completed on 3 October 2010, after the loss of millions of lives and unprecedented destruction. The world pledged for peace, but many problems remain unresolved. Even after such massive human and economic losses, humans did not learn, and just a few decades later, another great war engulfed the world again, which we will cover in detail in our next video. For now, that's all. Please like and share our video, and do not forget to subscribe to our channel, Rational Brains, so that we get motivation to make the next video. If you like this documentary, or want to give any criticism, that is your right. The comment section is open for you. Please share your valuable opinion because it will help us improve our videos. Stay blessed.